think about yourself as a predator, it's like, oh, I guess this actually works, because it sometimes will slow me down to where I'm not sure which one to go after.
Definitely means going together.
Yeah, swimming in tight groups together. And we'll talk about it in a little bit. Get to look. All right, so some of them have what can be called poster color or advertisement coloration. And this often, as was mentioned before, will advertise some kind of warning coloration or territoriality. Okay, so it may deter predators who may think that this is going to be an aggressive and or toxic individual. Okay. Often with that go various displays that will show kind of aggressive behavior. So we've talked about these guys before with respect to symbiotic relationships. So this is a anemone fish. And they are obviously very brightly colored, but they have this lovely little symbiotic relationship, which is highly territorial. Okay? They will aggressively protect that anemone habitat. And often to other fish, that sort of signal, their coloration pattern and that relationship sort of signals stay away. And the fact that they're living within an anemone, which some other critters are not going to be able to tolerate being around, helps, right? And then there's obviously crypsis or cryptic colorations, which is high camouflage, where they are very hard to see within their environment. And this is a leafy sea dragon here. Looks a lot like the kelp it's sitting on, right? So very cryptic. Okay? And that would go for a lot of the flatfish that we mentioned earlier as well, where you just can't see some of these fishes. Unless you really are hunting out. Okay, there's a lot of different locomotory aspects to fishes. Many of them do very different things. They have kind of the typical shape and fins and everything that you think of for movement, but depending on the species, they use them very differently, or not at all. So they have muscles that are in bands for swimming. Okay? These muscles contract on opposite sides of the body to create locomotion. Many fish, at least those that are in a more fusiform shape, okay, primarily use their caudal area and the muscles associated with it for movement. Okay, so their tail region. Okay, but depending on what type of fish and what shape you are, there are fish that use primarily just the back end of the tail. There are some that use primarily their pectoral fins, which are these for movement. Some that really just use the tail. Some that use their whole body. Okay? So it does kind of depend on which one you're talking about. So using only the posterior muscles, so the muscles closer to the back, near their tail, okay, which is, you know, for many fish, is the more muscular part of the fish in here. Often gives the greatest movement and fastest movement. So most open water, fast-moving fishes like jacks, mackerels, tunas, swordfish, are using that kind of movement, primarily from their caudal region, muscular kind of. And then there's kind of, you know, so some of them will contract throughout the whole body like an eel. Okay, so for reference, you can take a look at the one that we've got. Some of you have probably looked at it. There's an eel out in the hallway tank there, and it often is out and about, kind of cruising around. Take a look at it sometime just to get a better sense of their movement. And then there's a lot of fish that will kind of use something in between that, where they will use their pectoral fins, they'll use kind of some of the muscles that are more in mid-body, as well as their cod variant. Something like a cod. Yeah. Do you have a question? Oh. Maybe you were just holding up your pencil. I thought you were raising your hand. All right. So some fish only use fins to move. Okay. There's only a few of those. Some of them, so their body itself doesn't move that much, but their fins will move. Okay. So, and then some will use only the dorsal and anal fins. So an example of that are some of the more highly derived fish, or more recently derived fish, evolutionarily, which are things like our little friend over here. So take a look at this guy. Everybody glance over here. He's cruising around right now. Okay, look how he's moving. Puffer is who I'm talking about. So, Chloe, describe to me the movement patterns you're seeing right now.
Yeah.
Is he using his like the main part of his body to move?
No.
What's he using?
Just the back.
The back parts?
Yeah, uses
So the tail and some of the side fins? Yeah. And you don't see a lot of this though, right? Like with the body. The body itself is not really moving much, just the fins. Now he's part, I actually don't know if it's male or female, do you?
I guess we're saying he. So.
We're saying, yeah, all right. He. Yeah. I don't know how to sex this guy. But maybe he needs a partner so we can figure it out. I don't know.
Whether or not it's
they'll probably fight, right? Just beat the crap out of each other. Or they'll, yeah, fight or mate. See what happens. So that's a classic example, though, of highly derived fishes that are in that sort of box shape. That they don't look like they can move around a lot, but he's cruising. Okay? And they're actually fairly maneuverable with just using those fins. All right, and then there are a fairly large group of fishes that use primarily their pectoral fins, which are the ones kind of to the side. So remember, these are your pec muscles, right? So that's one way to remember. So the fins that are up front here on a fish are the pectoral fins. Okay. The ones closer back, further back, are the either the pectorals or the anal fins. The pectoral fins are usually the ones kind of closer to kind of under the mouth. We'll get to that in a little bit, but. And wrasses are sort of a classic group that primarily uses those pectoral fins, the ones further up, for most of their movement. Okay? Unless they have to do sort of a quick getaway, then they'll use the caudal fin, the tail. Okay? But most of their motion and movement is just through these fins. So they do a lot of this, which we call sculling. Yeah?
So sharks don't really use their pectoral.
Nope, not at all. Really.
So what do they use?
Not for movement. They're kind of in that category of things like tunas and jacks, where they're primarily using their caudal fin for movement. So yeah, their fins are not flexible, right? They can't do this with them, their pectorals.
So they just use them.
So they're using them basically for sort of balance and some directional movement, but it's not their main locomotory power at all.
So there are muscles in the fins, or
For a shark?
or
At the base of the body, yes. Yep. They're attached to muscles. You'll see today, actually. You can actually just send one out. Yeah. So they're attached to a set of muscles. Yep.
What fish only use their fins?
Well, these guys primarily only use their fins. And also things like, these are examples.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And primarily wrasses only use their fins too. In certain situations, I think all fish will use whatever they can to get away from a predator. But sort of day-to-day usage and day-to-day living, getting prey, whatever, moving around the reef, these types of fish will just use their fins. respire. Okay, so I think we all know, I hope, that fish have gills, right? What else would classify a fish? Okay, so they have gills. We've talked about a couple things here. So let's, I have this sort of, I think this is actually part of the next lecture, like, what is a fish? But let's talk about it now. So, they have gills, they have fins. What else? What do you think of when you think of a fish? What is it? They have scales. Okay. They have a jaw. Okay. They have a swim bladder. Okay. Anything else? Spine. So they're vertebrates, right?
They're cold.
So have we talked about vertebrates yet?
They're usually cold-blooded.
Usually cold-blooded. Why do you say usually?
Well, that was the fish discovered.
Yeah, isn't there some that aren't? Sunfish?
I'm just picking on you. Okay.
There's always an exception.
Well, many of the things that have already been mentioned, there are exceptions to, right?
Yeah.
But yes, most fishes are cold-blooded, or what's another term? What's the sort of scientific? What was that again? Ectothermic. So ecto means what?
You take on the temperature.
Outside. Thermo refers to what? Temperature. Okay. So they're outside temperature. Okay. So they'll try to match, their bodies try to match their ambient temperature, right? Their environmental temperature. What are we? Endotherms. So what does that mean?
Regulator.
We have a constant.
Have we talked about any endotherms thus far? No, not really, right? Most of the critters we've talked about have been ectotherms. So what does that mean again? We have to do what?
Self-regulate.
Yeah, we have to regulate our own body temperatures, which can be fairly limiting, right? You know, we think of ourselves as very advanced, and I suppose in many ways we are, but there are times when I was like, I think like, oh, it'd be nice to just have my body temperature match the outside. Be much more comfortable. But we obviously will, you know, we put on a sweater or we turn up our AC, right? We're temps off. But the problem with that is that we have a very, as mammals, particularly primates, we have a very narrow window, right? You go a couple degrees on either side of what our kind of normal range is, and you're very sick, most likely, right? You go a couple degrees over 100, and that's a problem. Okay? Our bodies don't handle that well. And usually our bodies are very good at regulating that. Okay? So it is something to think about. It's not that they are sort of less well set up or less adapted, but they can actually alter that temperature within their environment, which is kind of cool. Yeah.
It was the OPEC.
Oh, the OPEC.
The true warm-blooded
warm-blooded,
fish.
yeah. Yeah, there are a couple. There are tunas also that have sort of this. We'll talk about it later, but a kind of current situation where they can heat blood to the same parts of their body. So yeah, they're not all entirely ectothermic. There is some blood warming going on in there. All right. So how do they respire? Okay. They use their gills to extract oxygen from the water. So these are little filaments. We'll look up close and personal today at these vascularized filaments. And they use a countercurrent exchange system to exchange CO2 and O2. So carbon dioxide and water and oxygen, excuse me. Most bony fishes have kind of a hard coating over the gills, which is called an operculum. Right? And that operculum in a lot of fishes can actually move, okay, which helps to pump water